Outstanding, the ultimate accolade for teachers. We challenge secondary geography teacher Andy Roberts to go from good to outstanding. A top inspector will observe one lesson. 2 experts will fine-tune his practice and beef up his presentation. He then gets 2 weeks to take on the advice before the inspector comes back for the final verdict.
If I don't deliver a good lesson to students in this school, they will let me know very, very quickly.
Now, you're reflecting on the learning. That was going on all the time. However, your first objective was, why is the site being used for the Olympic Games? So we never actually said, oh, well, maybe it's because there isn't much going on there. Because your children are so, I've got so much respect, they're so cooperative, they did all the tasks and they could see the short-term aim of each of those tasks. But maybe it didn't sort of quite fit into a whole lesson.
Yeah, Ruth had some valuable comments, I think. There should have been a question that the students are very focused on answering, so they recognise there's a purpose to the lesson. There's no question about that.
What I personally like to focus on more is what I call body talk. Yeah, so we as communication experts look at 3 sections. One are words, one is the voice, and the last one is the body. And the body speaks most of all.
So what I like us now is to link delivering your message with your gestures as well with your vocal delivery to your classroom setting.
Locate the 6 photos which you think are represented by those 6 locations on the map.
Show how many photos and that you would like them more linked, so a bit more detailed gestures.
So if you look at the map, you see there are 6 locations. And
Can you do 6, 6, 6?
If you look at the map, you've got 6 locations. If I change my body language, how do you feel that's going to help the learners?
If I, for example, use my body language like this or this, you will suddenly interpret much more my body language rather than what I'm saying. So I will say, so what I like it now to do, you understand? You will say no, you don't come across as confident. Remember the inspector also said, Albert, you're bringing yourself more into the session. So what I like you to imagine is, here's your class, and you're sharing with your class, what were the circumstances of this photo day?
It was a summer's day, end of June. Summer's day, end of June, and it was very important. I went to the Olympic site to document what the land use was like prior to them removing the buildings and clearing the site. Until eventually I was thrown off because I was caught with a camera, and they weren't very happy about that. They didn't want it documenting.
Ooh, interesting.
Today has been very much like my lesson. Overloaded. I've got a lot of stuff going on in my mind at the moment. The most uncomfortable part of the day was probably engaging with the body language work. I'm not a natural presenter, that's not who I am. I think I'm going to find it very, very challenging to implement some of those strategies. But quite excited.
With his final observation just weeks away, Andy's back in the classroom to put all the advice into action and raise his game.
Right. That's the purpose of this lesson. Taking objective 1, what do I want you to be able to do?
Is it to maybe look at a site and be able to produce a map with all the same features that the site has?
Absolutely.
And be able to draw them
Absolutely.
on there?
I fine-tuned my objectives. I thought very clearly about what are the big things I want to get from this lesson rather than everything. So I think that's been useful.
Because this is a big, such a big area here, the stadium should go there, and then maybe you can have the media centre there.
The relaxed atmosphere for this particular lesson was without doubt an advantage. The learning was enhanced. And I think one of my fears is that by relaxing I maybe could lose the pace. But for me today the pace was there. What are your thoughts on putting the basketball arena here? Where's the Olympic park boundary? Right. Now you could choose to put things outside of that, but you'd have to have very good reason. Would you want all of these venues?
No, because it's near cars and everything. Yeah, even though they put bridges, it's still not very safe.
I'm really trying not to go for the closed body language, although I do find myself still doing it, especially this. But I do pull away. Maybe I could just preempt, is that, do you think, quite quick or very slow? I think, you know, I'll kick it, This feeds into the start of the next lesson. We need to pack away.
Andy's pupils give their feedback on his progress so far.
One of the most difficult things for me to do is change my body language. And so a lot of the time I do that and I fold my arms. What sort of message do you think that gives to students?
You don't look very approachable when you do that sometimes.
If your body language is positive, then we're going to be positive because students can interact with that.
So you're saying this is quite not just closed body language but also quite negative. Yeah, and that's more positive. It's interesting. You go through your lessons today, watch your teachers, watch their body language. There you go, see? Maybe there's more to this body language than meets the eye.
It's the most important thing, what the students think about the learning that's taking place in that room. It just emphasised to me the importance of pupil voice, and they're the consumer, aren't they? They're the client, really. So in the future, I'll certainly prioritise their feedback.
I want to just draw your attention to the key question for this lesson is, can the London Olympics be successful and sustainable?
Inquiries are incredibly complicated concepts. So that key question is quite important and should be there at the start of every lesson. I do recognise that. I was talking to the bioregional woman and I was very interested in where these 10 principles had come from and how they decided on these 10 principles. There's quite a story behind it. I am looking for opportunities to try and select stories that I think are appropriate. Maybe give it that little bit more of me and my life and my personal involvement with the issues.
Here we're showing you a presentation about sustaining natural habitats and wildlife and how we can ensure they are protected.
I'm handing lots and lots of the learning to the students here. Sometimes it's more challenging than it's been for me in the past.
In the Olympic Games, culture is based around everything.
I've not gone out of my comfort zone. I've always been able to pull it back at a snap and like, right, okay, let's refocus. And it's really turning, actually. I think that's a positive thing. I think I'm recognising there's a lot further I can go. And the only outcome of that is going to be more successful learners.
It's the day of Andy's final observation. Claire Gillies is back, and it's make or break time.
I'm back at Sydney Russell School to see Andy Roberts with his Year 9 geography class again. I'm really looking forward to seeing how his teaching's moved on.
Now, I'm sure from all the work we've done over the past few weeks that you're familiar with this particular area of East London. In fact, this site here is where the main stadium is going to be located. If we go back to there, that's where I live. In fact, I know this area incredibly well as I cycle down here, around the back of there, past Stratford Station and up round to my house every day on the way back from school. And one of the things that I like to do when I cycle home is try and imagine, try and envision what that place is going to look like. And that's what I want you to do today. I want you to envision futures. And so I'm going to ask you to just shut your eyes for a second. Imagine what that site's going to look like in 2020. OK, open your eyes. What could you see, Demi?
Sort of like children running around from schools that are more like deprived and haven't got that much money to have their own sports arena or hall.
Fascinating. I want you now to put yourself in role. I want you to be a person that lives on this Olympic Park site after the Olympics. I want you to write for me a pen portrait, a description of a person's life living there in 2020.
In this, would it affect him for the good or the worse?
Well, whoever he is, he's going to live on this site in 2020, isn't he?
Yeah.
So it's up to you whether he makes it as a sprinter or not. Now, what I'm going to ask you to do here is even more challenging, I think. On the board, there are some questions that I want you to consider as we listen to people's pen portraits so far.
I'm the Community Police Sergeant of London. The crime of London has risen 10 times the amount that it was in 2012. Personally, I think that the 2012 Olympics was a very bad idea at the time.
Brilliant, yeah. Well, not brilliant, obviously, if that was a real case scenario, but yeah, very interesting.
I thought it was a good idea that we read out our pen portraits because it gave us a perspective of other people's opinions and the other possibilities that could happen with the post-Olympics.
I just want to close the lesson by looking up at these questions. Adil, what people like living in this possible future that's so far been portrayed?
And portrays that the community is just going to be one, like everyone's going to work together.
So do you think that is a place that people would like to live?
Yeah.
Okay. Gemma, what are some of the good things about it?
It could give many people great opportunities and they have a chance to like see how it's changed in different jobs and stuff.
All right, people, thank you very much. We will leave it there.
With all that expert advice and weeks of practice, will Andy make it from good to outstanding?
Andy, thank you very much indeed. It was really lovely to come back and sort of see a lesson that linked to the one I saw before. Let me highlight some of the many outstanding features of your teaching. You could see evidence that the sort of content was calmer in many ways and you weren't trying to do too much. The other comment I remember making after the first observation was about sharing your personality.
That's
and
right.
There were some wonderful examples of that, with you referring to how you bike through the area, and you could tell they really thought, oh, so all that is so strong in your teaching. Tell me how you feel it went.
It's a very challenging skill to get students to envision futures, and I'm still playing in many respects with the strategies I'm using.
Do you think they did feel they actually could impact and have any influence on the future from how the lesson went?
No, and I didn't want to force that. It was too big and too important to squeeze in, like we said at the start, so I held off with that.
The one concern I had was that some of the thinking was almost beyond their capabilities because they didn't necessarily have quite enough facts at their fingertips. Talking to some of them, they weren't confident what would or would not be there for them to be considering between 2012 and 2020.
When I'm wanting students to consider futures, there is a blank sheet. I don't want them to know whether the stadium might still be there. If they don't want it to be there, it doesn't have to be there. In their future, it doesn't have to be there. Now, I know it is going to be there. Well, is it in 2020? And what I do need to do, I can see from that, is develop a sort of confident uncertainty. So when they have that uncertainty, they have enough confidence to go with that's what I want them to do. And that's challenging, isn't it? It is challenging.
Yes.
Maybe too challenging at this stage.
If I stand back from that lesson as a whole, I think it was so bordering on the outstanding, but not quite there in the whole pulling together the learning that they got out of that lesson. But without doubt, there are long lists, I could say, of your outstanding teaching features, and I'm absolutely certain that you probably have and will in the future be delivering some outstanding lessons. So thank you very much for letting me watch you teach again.
Thank you.
I knew that the lesson wasn't quite outstanding, and what the process did was make me look very closely at what outstanding learning and teaching is, because I had my own idea of what I thought it was. I'm quite confident that I know exactly what an outstanding lesson has to do now. And in some respects, it is ticking a lot of boxes, really. If you look at the learning that's taken place over the last few weeks with this group, I would say it's outstanding. It is, without doubt. And that's not something you can probably achieve in a one lesson. It has to be a series of lessons.